You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Homefield Apparel. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most important topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 297th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 953rd episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of June 29th, 2023. I am your host, Jared Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This week's banner moment will be on the same topic as last week's, Indiana having 2 draft picks, but with a little bit of a different spin. While it's obviously great that Jalen Hood-Schifino went from 2-year plan to one and done, and the visual of him embracing Woody in the green room will surely be seen by every recruit Indiana pursues, I want to focus on Trayce Jackson-Davis. It's possible to view his draft night slide as a disappointment, especially in light of the many mock drafts that had him getting picked at the end of the first round. Trayce surely saw it this way, tweeting, quote, "Y'all will regret it, I promise you," as second-round pick after second-round pick passed without his name getting called. But as they say, all's well that ends well. And the truth is that outside of the pick number of his selection, I'm actually not sure draft night could have gone much better for Trayce in Indiana. Consider the following 5 points. 1, Golden State traded an asset to get back into the second round to pick Trayce, showing that he's not just a second-round afterthought. They want him, and they're going to be invested in his development. 2, he got a guaranteed NBA contract, which many guys picked in and around his draft slot don't get. And sure, it helps when your agent is the brother of Golden State's new GM. 3, he's in a perfect system to take advantage of his skills as a screener, passer, cutter, rebounder, and shot blocker. And if Draymond stays, there isn't a better veteran duo of bigs for him to learn from than Draymond and Kevon Looney. 4, Draymond and Looney are both getting up there in years. Their eventual departure will open up a more prominent role for Trayce once he has a few years of seasoning to take advantage of it. And 5, from IU's perspective, getting Trayce and Jalen on high-profile teams like the Lakers and Warriors is great for reinforcing their story to recruits of Bloomington being a launching pad for NBA dreams. Both guys figure to at least carve out reserve roles on teams that have big playoff expectations. So, all in all, I'm ecstatic for both Jalen and Trayce. It seems they went to franchises who really believe in them and have a clear vision for their development and usage. Last Thursday night was a great one for Indiana basketball, and if IU's coaches continue to play their cards right on the recruiting trail, this year's NBA draft has a chance to represent the beginning of an important annual trend for a program that simply hasn't had enough of the top-end players to compete consistently on a national level. Oh, and for what it's worth, in ESPN's latest mock draft, Khalil Ware is a lottery pick, number 11, and Mackenzie Mbako, number 31, is the first pick in the second round. So, let's do it again in 2024. All right, now let me introduce my co-host this week. Ryan and Coach are both off, but here with me, he is the Steve Kerr of girls youth sports coaching in Cincinnati. He is the president emeritus of the Robert Johnson Fan Club, and he looms over other bracketologists like he's Victor Wembanyama. It is Andy Bottoms.
The best of youth sports coaching, you know that we got 'em. When it comes to analytic trends, you know he can spot 'em. For first-class bracketology, if you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top, you gotta go bottoms. If you want the top, you gotta go bottoms.
It always happens that, like, for the first couple days after a show that you're on, I end up just walking around my house. You gotta go bottoms if you want the top. Andy, what is your bottoms line on the last week in Indiana basketball?
I could probably give one on the last month of Indiana basketball. I haven't been on in a while from vacation and other things, but luckily not a ton has happened. Although I did enjoy the the draft preview show, and then I fit that in before the draft, and then went back and listened to you and Coach break out the minutes. So I thought that was good discussion about the roster as well. But the big thing, as you said, was really the draft and the excitement that you feel for both Jalen and Trace, I think, as you said, ended up in good situations, whether they went where they thought they would or not. I think situationally, not too bad, all things considered, and a good night for IU. And from this team's perspective, we'll talk about it in a couple minutes, but the schedule is finalized. So as you start looking at the pieces that come together, overall, I think a pretty good schedule. Maybe not quite as many highs as last season's schedule, but probably not as many lows either, which I think sometimes whether that's a bracketology, strength of schedule, whatever you want to say, I think sometimes that can be a good thing as well. So excited to see that part finished, have dates associated with that, and can try to figure out, at least from a family perspective, when we might be able to swing over around the holidays, which is usually our best chance to do it. So it seems like maybe a couple options that fall into that range this year. So that's always exciting for me and other IU fans who try to take advantage of the same opportunity when students are away and a little bit easier to get tickets.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you back, Andy. Great
to be
back. All right, so here's what we have in store this week. In the rest of segment 1, we'll break down the schedule. That'll be Hoosier headlines, because there wasn't a whole lot else that happened this week. And then segments 2 and 3, we've got a special guest this week. We are going to talk Big Ten hoops with Anthony Wright, former player at Michigan. You know him on Twitter as It's Ant Wright. One of the most entertaining and educational follows if you're a Big Ten basketball fan. So he's here, and we are going to talk with him about Indiana and all things Big Ten hoops in segments 2 and 3. So that should be really fun. All of that coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. But first, let's talk about our presenting sponsor.
Home field apparel, wear one for the team.
So this edition of Assembly Call Radio, just like all shows on the Back Home Network, presented by our friends at Home Field Apparel, where they have the largest collection of vintage IU apparel that you will find anywhere. So many great logos like the Bison, other IU logos that we haven't seen in decades. And Home Field went back into the archives, pulled them out, breathed new life into them, put them on the most comfortable materials that you could find. And that's why Home Field is so great. And, the other great thing about them, and the reason why you should be following them on Twitter, subscribing to the email and text alerts, whatever's best for you, is they're constantly adding new stuff. I just saw today they dropped a Kentucky line. It's 12 items in their new Kentucky line, which means that you could actually give a different item to each Kentucky basketball player and still have like 6 or 7 of them left over, which is kind of nice. But no, Home Field Apparel, they've got something for everybody. So whether you're doing, early Christmas shopping or birthday shopping or whatever it is, Home Field is the place to go, because anybody who likes comfortable clothes with stylish designs, they've got something for them. And if, they happen to be a big fan of a particular university or college, then they're definitely going to like what Home Field has. We have a promo code HOME, HOME, that will give you 15% off your first order when you go to their website, homefieldapparel.com. But again, if you're following them on Twitter or on the email list, sometimes they have flash sales for 20% off. So you can even do better than the 15% off. And those apply if you've purchased before. So lots of ways to save on all their great stuff. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code HOME to get 15% off if it's your first order. Wear one for the team. Okay. Andy, let's talk about the schedule. I imagine, everybody saw it, but just to, do kind of the quick rundown, you've got your headliner games, which are the Empire Classic that Indiana is going to be participating in. And we don't know the matchups there, but it's going to be UConn, Texas, and Louisville, and that'll be 2 games. So you'll get your initial matchup. Whoever wins will then play in the championship game, and then there's also a consolation game. UConn currently in the Torvik ratings, number 4. Texas, number 9. Louisville, number 138. Indiana also has the return game against Kansas, which is currently number 2 in Torvik's preseason projections. And then the game against Auburn in Atlanta, Auburn currently number 35. So those are your headliner games. Then you've got just some solid matchups against teams in the mid-100s. Florida Gulf Coast, number 118, Wright State, number 134, and Kennesaw State, number 142. They do have a new coach and lost a bunch of guys off the team that Indiana played last year, so we'll see how good they are, but they're still projected to be pretty good. And then you've got, the games that we would classify in the cupcake category. Army, number 291, Harvard, number 245, North Alabama, 195, and Morehead State, 222. And the first thing that jumps out there, Andy, is nothing in the 300s. And so, as you said, the high is not quite as high, but the low is not quite as low. So even, just kind of looks different. Army and Harvard aren't typically the teams that you see down there in the 300s. And so even though they're rated pretty low, those tend to be programs that are a little bit better than that. So just curious, for you to kind of expound on your thoughts that you talked about a little bit before on how this schedule strikes you. Because to me, you don't have the game against Arizona and some of that stuff, although I think the game against Auburn will be really fun. But some of those lower games don't figure to be quite the same, uncontested blowouts as we've had in the past, which would just make those more interesting both for fans to watch, and then I think also what the coaches can learn from those performances.
Yeah, I mean the SWAC and the Southland are noticeably absent from the schedule, so that's always disappointing. But no, I think when you look, you've got some quality mid-major type programs with Florida Gulf Coast. Wright State is always good; should be one of the better teams on the horizon. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly from listening to Rocco Miller on podcast on the Brink, he talked about Kennesaw State. While they did lose the coach and a number of players, they do still have some of the pieces back from the team that IU played last year, and that gave Xavier all they could really handle in the NCAA tournament. So I think you got a few of those good games there. You've got a few that should be relatively easy. The Harvard game comes on a neutral floor to, I guess give you a little bit of a boost in that regard. But I think with what you might see is with some of these other teams is you might have some closer games than you might want to for this team that's really trying to integrate a lot of new pieces and things like that. Maybe that won't end up being the case, but I do think you're playing a little bit better caliber teams that might be able to, things are going well for them, give them a little bit of run for their money. But I think that helps prepare you a bit better. And if one or two of those teams ends up being even better than what Torvik predicts, could be a little bit better win from a tournament resume standpoint than maybe some of the ones they've had in the past. So I think overall a pretty good job. And realistically, I know I said the highs weren't quite as high, but in reality, you're guaranteed to play either UConn or Texas, maybe not both, and Kansas. So those are really two, no matter what combination of those, at least two, maybe three really, really high-end games. And Auburn is always going to be competitive, and an SEC team on a neutral floor is going to be good. So, don't mean to downplay it all that much. I do think you still have some headliners as you categorize them here in that regard. And I think it's the kind of thing you're going to look at with how you get another good non-conference game in the post Big Ten ACC Challenge world that IU finds itself in right now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing to remember about, just chronologically how this non-conference will play out. There will be 2 Big Ten games mixed in there as well. So those will happen in December. And it's one of those things, Andy. I mean, obviously Indiana's replacing a lot of production from last year, and sometimes when that happens, in the past, whether it was under Tom Crean or Archie Miller or even Mike Woodson's first season, the schedule was a little softer in the non-conference to kind of account for that. And Indiana didn't really do that this year, and I think that's perfectly fine. You've got, these games against, really good teams to challenge yourself, but I think it's good that, instead of just fattening up on 4 or 5 cupcakes in the 300s where you're going to dominate and put up stats, but you don't really learn anything about your team, playing Florida Gulf Coast, Wright State, and Kennesaw State that could all beat you in Assembly Hall if you don't, if you bring a C effort, that's going to be a game that goes down to the wire. I think that's good for this team. Because this team has talent. They lack obviously some cohesion that they'll get through playing, and just, some of the young guys lack experience. But I would much rather run the risk of playing a team like that and dropping it if the team's not ready to play, rather than, like I said, 4, 5, 6 games against cupcakes where you're going to learn nothing. So, it's risk reward. And I think it'll also just help, strength of schedule numbers and all those things. So I think it shapes up pretty well for the kind of team that we have. Like, I don't think this roster is good enough that you would want to just play like a murderer's row, and go play like 7 or 8 games against top 20 teams, because you're probably not going to be ready for it. But this schedule has a nice balance, I think, that can help prep this team for Big Ten play while also giving them the opportunities that they'll need to notch wins, for NCAA tournament consideration. So I don't have many quibbles with it. I'm pretty satisfied with what this schedule is going to give us.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think you always want to see some different stylistic teams play it. I think Army plays a little bit of a different style. Harvard, a bit of that as well. So I think I think that's the other thing that you want coaches to try to do is how can you mix and match games to be able to pick up wins, but also do some things that prepare you for the season while also allowing time for guys to play who might not get a lot of minutes later in the season, while also allowing you to experiment with some different things personnel wise and whatever. So it's a delicate balance when you try to figure out all those things, but I think they did a pretty good job and have a chance to earn some wins that will really, if they can pick them up, will, carry them through the season and into March from a seeding perspective. And also really seem to have a lack of games that really hurt you from a strength of schedule standpoint. Now you go out and drop a few of those, non-headliner games. That obviously hurts, but I think just from a pure scheduling standpoint, they haven't put themselves at a disadvantage by any stretch.
Yeah. So I'm curious. You said you listened to the episode Coach and I did on the minutes. Did you find yourself having any major quibbles on how we doled out the minutes?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it underscored, and you guys talked about this, what a difficult exercise that really is, where you can kind of have a conversation with your friend at the bar and off the cuff start rattling off numbers. And then when you see how they actually roll up, it's not quite what you think it is. I think as you look at it right now, you've got a lot of question marks for different reasons. You've got the question of, CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks. And I think Gunn is a pretty big wild card in terms of what his minute, the range of minutes that he might get. I think that he's kind of a wild card in that regard. And I think Mbako is the other one where I think if he plays well, you guys probably come out on the low end of that regard, given his skill set and maybe some of what he brings to the table. But it's hard to project forward, and you think that they want to play, more guys. And by the same token, we've kind of talked ourselves into like, oh, this team's going to be deeper and Woodson's going to play more guys and whatever. And that didn't prove to be the case. Now, injury to X was part of the factor for that. So it's probably not fair to heap that totally on, Woodson's general philosophy or things like that. So, I think it's hard when you step back and you look and it's like, hey, there's 10 guys who are getting, double digit minutes. That seems, based on what we've seen, 2-year sample size, perhaps unlikely, but I think the logic used to get there is really probably as important as anything in terms of trying to figure out how that looks. And doing it by averages is also difficult because you kind of look at some of the games early in the season, you figure, hey, they're going to be able to get these guys some minutes, and how does that average out over the course of the season? Although I feel like I used that logic in some of Jay's over-unders last year, like, oh, this guy's going to do this in the non-conference, and I'm pretty sure I did really poorly in that exercise. So that may not be
all of us did.
So that may not be a fair way to do it, is to bank on too many things in the non-conference. But no, I didn't have any major quibbles with it by any stretch, especially given how many of the players on the roster we've not really seen play either at all for IU or any significant and meaningful minutes for IU. It becomes all that much more difficult of a task.
Yes. Okay. Well, coming up here on Assembly Call Radio, we are excited to be joined by Ant Wright to talk Big Ten hoops. He's here. We're going to debate his top 5 positional lists, find out who he likes and doesn't like on IU's roster, and much, much more. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. Ant, what's up, man?
What's happening? How you guys doing?
Good.
Doing well. How about you?
I'm good. Chilling, hanging out. Are we live on something? Where are we live at right now?
Oh, yeah, we're live. We're live on YouTube, live on Twitter, live on Facebook.
Dang, y'all live everywhere.
I didn't tell you that before I sent you the link, did I? Oh, yeah, we're live.
Oh man, that's really good.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you told him that before he really said anything. So, I mean, you didn't totally hang him out to dry. Just part way.
Well, thanks for doing this, man. I've been looking forward to talking to you ever since we started interacting on Twitter. So,
hey, not a problem. Not a problem at all, Jared.
Nice to get you on here. Okay, so I'll do a little intro here, and we'll just hop right into it. Here we go.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Christian. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Andy Bottoms. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here with us this week to talk Big Ten hoops. He's a young man who played at Oak Hill Academy, and then after that played at Michigan from 2006 to 2010 before transferring to Toledo for his final season. Founded the Wright Media Group and the Full Ride Network, hosts the Big Ten Coast to Coast podcast. You know him from his Twitter account at It's Ant Wright. It is Ant Wright who is here with us to talk Big Ten hoops. Ant, thanks for making time tonight, man. We appreciate it.
Dang, shout out to the crowd giving me the standing ovation.
That's right. The first Michigan grad, I think, to get a standing ovation on the show.
Oh, really?
But that's okay.
I like it. I like it. No Max Bielfeldt love?
We have some Max Bielfeldt love, actually. He's going to be doing the outro for the show. We've got him on here, too. Nice. So, no, we loved our one season with Max Bielfeldt. No doubt about it. Hey, so before we jump in and start talking about the Big Ten, I was going back through your career and saw that while you were at Michigan, you went 2-2 against Indiana, including a loss in 2008 to that red-hot Indiana team that was 13-1 under Kelvin Sampson before everything
really
just really since everything until everything obliterated for about 20 years in the program. But I'm curious to get your thoughts, just kind of your memories about that team or those Indiana teams from back in the day when you were at Michigan.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny because, usually there is a team out there that I had a good game against or I have like a memorable experience with. And, Indiana is one of those teams where I really don't have one. But at the same time, I do remember going into Assembly Hall for the first time, and the way that it's built is weird. Like I've been in, I feel almost every stadium arena out there, and Assembly Hall is one of the weirder ones because it feels like you're in like an opera house.
Yeah, where
like one side just goes straight up, and I remember during the game something happened, and the students. The student section was chanting "Stand up, old people," to the like boosters and the people who had money who are too good to stand up. I remember getting chirped in the game by someone who was sitting courtside. I remember that.
Was it John Mellencamp by chance?
I don't even know who it was. I just remember some dude with like brown hair. Clearly like his like mid-20s, just say get back on the bench, right? And I was like, I'm gonna shoot the ball as soon as I touch it. Like that's all I knew was gonna happen. Whatever the play is, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna shoot it and look at this guy. I missed, so I didn't look at him. But I will say that was also, that game where we were down by like 20. We were down by 20. This was, I believe, 08-09. We were down by 20, and one of our guys just got hot. And my boy CJ, I think he had a good game too. We came back and won that game after being down by 20 at your place. That was huge for us because we couldn't lose that game because we were like a 10 seed at the end of the day. So looking back, it's like we could not lose that game, right? So we after that game, there was really severe ice and our plane was just a mess. So we didn't leave until like 4 a.m.
Oh man.
And I had an 8 a.m. that following day. So we literally got back and I took a nap in the locker room, got on the bus and went to class. Because if you don't go to class, you run at practice. And I'm just not doing that. So I know super boring stories and usually there's a lot more. But one thing I will remember and stay with me for forever was when we played that DJ White team. No, I've played a lot of teams growing up. I played a lot of teams growing up. I played a lot of we've beaten a lot of teams. Like I played against some really good players, some guys who are going to be Hall of Famers. I think I'm going to win every game. Doesn't matter if I'm playing 5 minutes or 40 minutes. That is the only time where I dreaded the matchup. going into the game. And it wasn't because they were a certain talent. It was because they were physical and they were tough and they were mean and they were really good. And on top of that, usually I'm like, oh, I got them between the ears. They were tough, mentally tough and disciplined. That was the difference. Usually you don't get that all at the same time, right? Usually one of those are dropped off, and there's always ways to counter it. Trust me, there's always ways to counter it. But like we played UConn. They were ranked number 1. We played at their place. I thought we could win that game. Like, we were up by like 9 or 10 in the first half on the road at number 1 in like January or February. And it's because I felt that we were good in places where they struggled in. And I'm like, yo, we can get them here, here, here. With that Indiana team, I just felt that they were so sound. And their weaknesses, they were still average at it. And my boy CJ after the game, no. Second half. He comes, we both check out. And I sit down with him and he goes, bro, that Eric Gordon kid is gonna be real good. And I'm like, and I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, I have never talked so much shit to one kid in my entire life, and all he did was adjust his mouthpiece and score on me like 3 times in a row. Yeah, that was such a good team, so underrated. And and you know what? It was a team that I think the country missed out on seeing something really, really special with them. Because how good DJ was. You guys had Crawford. Armand Bassett
was 17-1, man. Armand Bassett was on that team.
He was really solid. Like he kind of gets overlooked. That kid was really, really solid. Like Eric Gordon and DJ White and all those dudes were good, but Armand was just real steady. And that team could have been special, really special. And then Dockage took over and ran that shit straight into the dirt. So which is unfortunate. Really,
gotta play sad violin music whenever we talk about the way that season
that team was so special, and it sucks because I thought that team could have won a national championship. If Kelvin Sampson was still there to this day, I think he wins at least one national title there, at least one, and that would add to your 5. You guys have been stuck on 5 for a long time. Like Michigan has a title before you guys had your last. That's how long it's been for you. It has been a long time since Michigan won a title. So I know it's been a long time for you guys. But this is one of those things where the country really missed out on something special with that dynasty. And it's crazy how you see what's going on nowadays, and you would laugh at what Kelvin Sampson was allegedly doing back then for something so trivial and small. I think Indiana could have taken a lump for him. I think they could have taken a lump. Hey, you want to give me a show cause for a year, or you want to, suspend me for a year, whatever. I think Indiana should have just took the lump and just kept it moving with them, knowing and seeing what was in front. Like Kelvin Sampson's top 3 for me, coaches right now. Top three easily.
And that's one of the best teams he ever put together.
Yeah,
honestly,
I think his son is with him. He's grooming him to be that next coach too. And I'm sitting here like, bro, like you could have had Kelvin this whole time, and when he leaves, you just drop it off to his kid, and he could keep it going. And man, you could have been good for decades in the way that he can recruit and develop, the way he plays defense. Everything that he does is Big Ten-esque. And I'm sorry, but I love.
Well, now that you've depressed all of us,
I'm sorry. I love Kelvin Sampson, and that team in 07, 08 was so freaking good. And the Big Ten knows how good they were, but the country forgets. They have no clue. they don't think about Indiana 07, 08 like Big Ten fans do. But it's truly one of the strangest things to happen, seeing a team like that just completely like get his bottom cut, like just completely cut out, and getting that end result was just icky. It just didn't make you just. It's like taking a shower with like really low water pressure. You know,
Yes.
like
Yes.
you almost felt cleaner before you got in. Like you could really feel the bottom of the shower. Like, ew, it's not, you know what I mean? Just gave you that ick feeling. Like, did that really just happen? So
Yes.
I'm sorry for
Unfortunately, it
ranting
did.
and rambling, but that was
That's okay. I figured you'd have some interesting insight on that time in the Big Ten. So, not really a time that we look back on very fondly as IU fans, and certainly the 3 years that followed it. But it is always interesting to think back to how good that team was, because that was clearly a Final Four caliber team, and we just never got to see it.
Not
come to
even
fruition.
close.
Yeah.
So oh man.
Yep. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the Big Ten of today. And we're going to talk about the lists that you've been putting out. I've got those as graphics here. We're going to put those up there soon. But I want to just start by getting your overview thoughts of the conference, and kind of where it is. And, you've seen all the guys that have come and go, this offseason.
Yeah.
How are you viewing the conference overall in terms of strength? And then as you look at the teams, are there kind of some tiers that have formed for you in terms of who's at the top, who's kind of that next group, and then who's after them?
Yeah. So going into it, the bigs I felt was going to be a drop off, but after looking at the bigs, they're still not bad. They're still pretty good. There's there are some, you guys know that where I have where.
It's going to come up later.
That's not an indictment on his game. It's just his situation and where I feel where he is in comparison with everybody else. Like he's the most talented player, maybe in the league, in all league, like no matter what position, maybe the most talented. The guards have gotten a lot better. Front courts have gotten a lot better. Compared to last year. And I think that should bode well when it comes to NCAA tournament. When you're looking at, I just want to make sure that I got all the teams. I always go back to the standings just to make sure that I got all the teams. So you have Purdue. I know you guys swept them last year, but they have 2 freshmen in the backcourt who just got done playing over 1,000 minutes. They're going to be a lot better. So they had things to work on over the summer, over the spring. They know why they lost, and Matt Painter's going to have to make some tough decisions on playing time, I believe, when it comes to guys like Ethan Morton and Mason Gillis. You can't really not play Miles Colvin, and you got to find out how to get minutes from TKR and or Caleb First. And you can't play Zach Edey 35 minutes a game again and expect him to last all the way through without any injury. That's just not going to happen. So they're going to be a lot better. Northwestern gets Boo Buie back, and they get Langborg, who is a Princeton transfer. It's pretty solid. Michigan State brings back literally everybody. Maryland, Jameer Young. And then you have Deshaun Harris-Smith, who's a freshman shooting guard. I know you guys aren't going to like this either, but my favorite to win freshman player of the year. Nothing on Mbako at all, whatever. He's going to be an NBA first rounder, all that fun stuff. But his situation at Maryland is very, very good. When you're looking at Illinois, they bring everybody back, but they still lack a point guard. Super weird. 2 years in a row having elite wings, don't have a point guard. That part's strange. Iowa with Tony Perkins. We'll see. We'll see if their new freshman, who's like kind of unranked, but he's coming in with Owen Freeman. We'll see if he's gonna like Brock Hardy or something like that. He's pretty solid. Michigan, Doug comes back, but still, I think they're looking for one more big guard. Penn State brings in Ace Baldwin, who's really good. Player of the year of the A10. DeMarco Dunn, UNC guy. We'll see how that gels. Brand new team. Rutgers loses some, but still they have Noah Fernandez at the 1, Derek Simpson at the 2. Wisconsin, Connor Sigian is really freaking good. Chucky Hepburn isn't as good as he thinks, but he's really, really important. And they have Max Klesman coming off the bench, of course. Nebraska, Kisei is the most fun player in the league, in my opinion. Ohio State is going to be good. 5-15 last year, but they had some fluke losses. But I like Bruce Thornton coming back for year 2, and I like what Roddy Gale showed, especially towards the end. Then Tayson Chapman, I believe, is a freshman coming in who's really, really good. And then Minnesota should have one of the worst backcourts you've seen all season long in the last 5 years or so. The backcourts are going to be much better this year, and that's going to be good. Another thing, last year, there were too many NCAA tournament caliber teams in the league, and that hurt people. That hurt a lot with seeding. There's a reason why 6 Big Ten teams were between seeds 7 and 10. It's because they had so many losses against other tournament caliber teams that they all put them in that 7-10 or 8-9 game. It's ridiculous. Out of the 8 games, 6 of them showcased one Big Ten team. And it was because it was Purdue, and then 2 through like 12 or 13 were separated by 2 or 3 games.
Yeah, it wasn't much.
It just didn't make sense to me. But there weren't enough teams to beat up on last year. I think you're going to have more teams to beat up on this year. But you need some teams to fall off to get that seeding up. But overall, this coming year, it should be another really, really good year. Games should be really competitive. And so, yeah, it should be good.
So with Purdue and Michigan State, now the prohibitive top 2, I think in any preseason rankings you look at, who are 1 or 2 teams that you like, whether it's more than other people or not, kind of in that next tier behind those 2?
I like Wisconsin. I know it's Purdue and Michigan State up there, but I really like Wisconsin. I like what they did in the offseason. One, they retained who they needed to. They went out and somehow went into A.J. Store's house and got him. I have no clue how that happened, but they went and got A.J. Store. Wisconsin's probably the last place I expected A.J. Store to go. But they got him now to run the 3. That's going to be a really good team with Chucky Hepburn, Connor Segian, A.J. Store, Tyler Wall, and Steve Crow. Very, very good team. I like Maryland. Akeem Hart left, but they have, I believe his name is Jamie Frazier, who's a freshman coming in. They have Deshaun at the 2, and they brought back their 1, 4, and their 5. They have Dante Scott back, who is a little bit inconsistent, but he can show up as a Big Ten player and an all Big Ten player. Then you have Julian Reese at the 5. I like to call him TJD Light. Then you have Jameer Young at the 1, who is arguably the best point guard in the conference. You can probably argue like 3 or 4 guards up there as number 1, and he's right up there in competition. I like them, and I also just want to make sure that I didn't miss them. I like
one team Ohio missing State so far.
I like Ohio State. They have Bruce Thornton. They have Gale. They got Jamison Battle from Minnesota, which I think is super underrated. Felix Okpara is going to be really, really good. Seeing what he did when Zed Key went down. And Zed Key also returns as well. Devin Royals in there. Tayson Chapman's in there. That's going to be a really good team. Those will be my 5. And I think Indiana and Illinois are right there at 6 and 7. We'll see. Illinois is super talented, but they don't have a point guard. So I would have to go with Indiana at 6 because they are more balanced in terms of like depth. But Illinois will be probably 7 for me.
So safe to say, I mean, as you just talked about with Khalil Ware, saying he may be one of the most talented guys in the conference. So you have Xavier Johnson in your top 5 point guards. So you recognize the talent on Indiana, but you have questions about how it's all going to fit together. And so I want to dive into those because you hit one of those questions in your 5 bold predictions. And so we've got this up here for the people who are watching. I'll read them real quick for the people who listen on the podcast. So your 5 bold predictions for the Big Ten. Maryland's Deshaun Harris-Smith will win Big Ten Freshman of the Year, which you already mentioned. Yeah. Iowa's Ben Krikke will finish as a top 5 center in the Big Ten. That's the transfer from Valpo. Yeah. 2 of Maryland, Wisconsin, and Ohio State will finish in the top 4, which are the teams that you just mentioned. Felix Okpara starts over Zed Key at Ohio State. And then number 5, Indiana won't reach its potential until Mackenzie Mbako plays mostly at the 4. Yep. And this has been a big topic of conversation because, a lot of us, when we look at this roster, Xavier Johnson, clearly the most important player is the point guard, but then the other 3 most talented players are Kel'el Ware, Malik Reneau, and Mackenzie Mbako, with Mbako slated at the 3, Reneau at the 4, and Ware at the 5. Yeah. And it is an interesting fit, and we've all kind of been talking about how it's going to go. So break this down for me. And, how do you see those 3 playing together? Because they're certainly going to be on the court together. And if Mbako is playing the 4, who then is playing the 5?
Whoever you want, whether it's Sparks or Ware or even Reneau. I think end of the day, I think you're going to see Reneau and Mbako at the 4 and the 5 a lot because they gave you so much versatility on both ends. I think you're going to see Reneau shooting the ball a lot more this year. I still think about that 3 in transition against Bethune-Cookman on the left wing, where he's like running down, catches and shoots it, and it's just so smooth and so easy. You could see him shooting like 2 or 3 threes a game, honestly, if you really let him loose. He didn't do it in Big Ten play because it's a lot different shooting the ball against Bethune and shooting the ball against Illinois, right? 2 big different things, right? The ball's a little bit heavier, right, when you're playing against Illinois. And then you have – my thing is that you're going to get pressure from 2 sides, in my opinion. If Malik Reneau is playing at a high level and you can't really sit him and you can't sit Mbako, they're just going to slide down, in my opinion. If CJ Gunn does what he's supposed to be doing right now, CJ Gunn should demand 25 minutes at the 2. Trey Galloway, you have to play him. Just from him being probably one of the biggest glue guys returning. Ethan Morton is a glue guy, but Ethan Morton doesn't give you much. It's kind of weird. But you have Trey Galloway who can give you scoring. He's athletic. He can guard multiple positions. You can't not play him. You also can't not play X. And then what happens if Gabe Cupps turns into Jordan Holes 2.0? You can't not play him 15, 18 a game. If that happens, you're going to play 3 guards. You're going to play more more Cupps with X, and then you're going to go with either Trey or CJ on the wing, and you can't not play Mbako, especially if he's shooting the ball the way that we know he can shoot, get out in transition the way that you know he can get out in transition and use his length. And then at that point, who are you going to play at the 5? Is it going to be a high motor guy like Sparks? Is it going to be where you know there's a talent, but is he going to help you win this game? Is it going to be Reneau because you've seen him do so many things? They have a lot of options. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because if someone steps up, that they're automatically going to change the rotation. The positive is when the rotation changes, I think it's going to make more sense down the road because I think it's going to start with Trey and X or CJ and X and then Mbako at the 3 and then Reneau at the 4, Ware at the 5. I think that's going to be your starting sexy lineup. But in the last several minutes, it's a 1-possession game. I don't think that group is out there. I just don't think that's the group that you would finish the game with. I think you would finish with Mbako at the 4. Then it's just a question of who you finish with at the 5. Do you want to go with more rim protection or do you want to go with more versatility? And I think that's going to be something that they're going to have to find out in the first several games before they really get into Big Ten play.
And that can segue us into talking about your Big Ten center power rankings, because as you see here, the rankings you have Edey, Cliff Amoryi from Rutgers, Julian Reese, Stephen Crowell, and Dane Danger rounding out the top 5.
Yeah.
Many Indiana fans will be wondering, okay, where's Kalel? Then we've got Pharrell Payne, Terrace Reed, Ben Krikke, and then Kalel Ware at number 9. And as I mentioned in our banner moment off the top, he's currently projected in mock drafts as number 11 in the NBA draft and number 9 in the center power rankings.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I'm curious why you decided to put him here. Obviously, the talent is there. You recognize the talent.
Yeah.
This seems to me to suggest that you don't think the production is really going to take the big step up from last year that a lot of us are expecting / hoping.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to, confuse where you will be, where you're seen as an NBA guy and where you're seen in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things. Or else Jed Howard would have been player of the year last year, right?
Yeah.
When Michigan fans were like not very thrilled at times, more times than not, actually. So we have to remove the NBA talk and just look at it in a vacuum of just Big Ten play and the type of coaching that goes on and the type of schemes that go on, and also the opportunity for Ware and the fact that Indiana has options outside of him. If he were the only option, this would be like if he was at Rutgers and Cliff wasn't, Ware probably top 6, top 5. I'd put him in there. But I believe in Sparks. I really believe in Sparks. And I believe that they have the size at the 4 with someone like Renew to take some minutes at the 5. I think Ware, his offense is very good. I think he has the potential to be dangerous. He played the 4, and I believe he played the 3 in stretches last year.
They had a ton of big guys at Oregon last year.
Yeah, when there was when they had like Dante in the game and Biddle in the game, like who's the 3? It's him. Like he's the one, and he can handle the ball a bit. I'm really interested in seeing how much freedom Woodson is going to give him. Like TJD, from looking at TJD, what he did, his freedom this last year, I want to see if they're going to give Kalel that same type of freedom and long leash to say, hey, you do you. Like I have seen film of Kalel Ware take the ball up the court, hit combos, and then shoot a step back 3 from like 27 feet. And it looks really, really good. And then I've seen him get outplayed by Stephen Crowell in the NIT.
Mm-hmm.
So, like who are we going to get? Like I am not questioning his ceiling. He has the highest ceiling of anyone here in terms of pro potential. He is. I've been watching so many of his games, and it's like the whole game, like not his makes, his misses, like the whole game. Like I want to see what he's doing when he doesn't have the ball. What's he doing when he can't get a rebound? What's he doing when he gets boxed out really hard? Does he try to still work for it? Just little things like that. If Woodson can get him to play hard all the time, it's going to change the team. On top of that, is he going to be in shape enough to play hard all the time? If he's playing hard all the time, how many minutes does that translate into? For Michigan, right? Dude played so freaking hard, he can only play like 19 minutes a game. Mm-hmm. That's it. And it's because he played hard every single possession and left it all out there. If Ware ends up doing that, what is his stamina like? Is he going to have his body in pristine condition to be able to do the things that he can do? He should be a good rebounder from day one. I want to see, are they going to let him expand his game? Are they going to allow him to face up? Are you going to be in the mid post? Are you going to try to find guys like similar to what TJD did? Trace was so good last year. because he would catch the ball in the mid post with almost no. He would have no interest in scoring. All he wanted to do was manipulate the defense so much to get somebody open.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's going to fake in one spot, knowing if I can move this guy 3 feet to the left or to the right, Miller's wide open. If I can move this guy a little bit here or there, my guy Hood-Schifino is going to be right there. If I could do this, oh, that's a quick handoff to Trey, and he has a dunk, right? So he manipulated defenses on another level that is not really seen in college anymore. What can Ware do to kind of substitute that? I'm not sure. But just know a big part of him being at 9 is that Indiana has options. If they want to play a certain way, they have options if he's not playing well. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The only team where I could see that has other options is Illinois, where they could play Coleman at the 5. Everybody else is going to be the dude. Ben Krikke, I think his only sub is going to be Owen, who's a freshman. Terrace Reed, he's literally the only center in the lineup. Pharrell Payne, the only real center in the lineup. Steve Crowell, he's got Gus Yalden, who will be a freshman. Julian Reese, they signed a freshman. I think they have Favor Air as well. Favor Air didn't really play much last year. Cliff, I don't even know who his backup is. And Purdue with Zach Edey, I don't know if Will Berg is even eligible. I don't even know if he's healthy. Caleb First, I don't know why he's still there. That's my only thing with Ware. Yeah. It's nothing really. It's not about his ceiling or his NBA prospect. It's like there's a lot of cool questions that need to be answered.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing with him defensively, and this is kind of what a lot of IU fans have looked at with if you play him and Renew together, while he's got good size, he's slight, and so you look at a lot of these dudes that you've got on here, big, typical Big Ten back to the basket type guys. And I think when you look at if he's the 5 that's playing with, to go back to the previous point with Mbako at the 4, a real opportunity to put Mbako on these guys, he then has to be the one who's guarding these guys in the post. Based on what you've looked at, I mean, how much does that play into your concern or your belief that maybe Renew ends up being the guy who gets more of those minutes at the 5 than fans might think at the point?
I mean, I think Ware can handle pretty much anyone, honestly, because he's 7 foot and his wingspan's got to be like 7'5".
Yeah,
minimum.
7'8", I think. Actually,
yeah, minimum. Yeah, like I don't even know what it is, but just watching from like, okay, his longs he's got to be like at least +5, +6, at least. So he's like 7'8". Yeah, so he's fine guarding pretty much anybody. I think he'll be fine playing. Even Zach Edey, he'll need to be more positional, but he can guard anyone in the conference easily. I'm not too worried about him defensively, is what I'll say. I'm not worried. Even the guys who are bigger and beefier, I mean, all you need is like a good low center of gravity, and you could make someone not move if you're in the right spot. You just got to do your work early, and you just can't get buried under the basket, or a few of these guys will just turn and just dunk the ball on you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes more sense now that you've explained it, in terms of opportunity and production and the fact that he's got other guys who could take it from him. That makes more sense why you have him where he is. So
that's why like context is huge with me.
Yes.
And making these without context, people will get like question marks above their head. Like, what the heck is this guy doing?
But yeah, it's all based on the criteria that you're using, because if you were doing most talented centers, he'd be right up there at the top.
Most talented. He'd be on, easily. He'd be one, then like there'll be like a different page for everybody else. Like he's kind of a one of one in terms of talent and potential.
No, I mean, IU fans are, just ecstatic to see him. I mean, he's the kind of player that we haven't had, and seeing, I guess that's one other question for you, seeing what Mike Woodson did with Trace Jackson Davis in his 2 seasons. Yeah. What does that suggest about what he can do with a guy in Colel who, it was a big story when he came that, when he was at Oregon, the coach who recruited him left. He just really struggled, got in Dana Altman's doghouse, and just had a rough freshman year, like a lot of, even non-athletes have when they go to college. And so the hope is he comes, he's got a better relationship with Woodson, they're able to connect better, and stuff is unlocked. Do you buy that narrative? And based on what you've seen from Woodson, do you think he can pull the best out of him?
I think so. I mean, you're talking about someone who is an NBA coach at heart, and you're talking about someone who has, coached against some really talented players, and also has relationships with other coaches where if he doesn't have the answer, he can make a phone call or two and kind of pick their brain on, hey, how should I attack this? Or like, hey, this is going on. Is there an example that you went through that worked or did not work? I think it all depends on also who the kid is too. You have to know how to push his buttons. What you did with Trace may not work for Ware because he'll internalize what you say differently. You have to know how to communicate with people, how to teach them, because everyone's different. How you would talk to Ware may be completely opposite than Sparks. Maybe one needs their butt kicked, the other one needs some TLC, right?
Yeah.
And it's not being solved. It's knowing who your players are. Like if you have kids, one of your kids may respond to this way better. Other kid may respond to this way. The better you know your players, the better you're going to be able to coach them. And that's one thing from an NBA standpoint. Someone who coaches guys for over 82 games a year if they make the playoffs, the preseason, and got all the trainings and stuff, and you got all the business meetings, and he should know what makes these guys tick. And you can get a lot of answers from the family, like, hey, what makes them tick? How can I piss them off without losing them? How can I do this? How can I do that? And then being able to take that and in your way be able to get the most out of them.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next list here. This is the point guard power rankings.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got top 5: AJ Hoggard, Boo Buie, Jameer Young, Xavier Johnson, Braden Smith, and then rounding out the rest of the 14: Ace Baldwin, Bruce Thornton, Doug McDaniel, Chucky Hepburn, Tony Perkins, Mike Mitchell, Noah Fernandez, Aaron Eulis, and Illinois' point guard to be named later, which is hilarious. All right, so X at 4. Talk to me about why you think Hoggard, Buie, and Young are better than him, and does him coming off of injury and kind of just wondering how he'll return, does that make any difference here? Did that factor in?
It does a bit. The fact that he is in the top 5 still just shows how much respect I have for him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think from Jameer Young really proved in year 1 that rarely happens for a guard to come into the Big Ten as a transfer and impact as much as he did. I think in year 2 he's going to be even more dangerous. Boo Buie coming back for a 5th year or 6th year, I don't even know, but he's probably the biggest killer among any of these guys. He can go off for like 30, 40 on any given night. And he put Northwestern on their back. Adij was there too as Robin, but Boo was Batman. And being able to take Northwestern to their second NCAA tournament ever and get another win, and like they played UCLA down to the wire, very good 2 seed in UCLA. Then I think AJ Hoggard, in terms of being a two-way player, is the best in the conference. Nobody guards as many guys like him on the perimeter. Like one game he's guarding Chris Murray. Next game he's having to guard. I remember a year ago he had to guard Johnny Davis, and he had to guard Jaden Ivey. Then he would have to guard Keegan. Like he has to guard so many different players at the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Whoever's the best scorer on that opposing team, he's going to guard if they're on the perimeter, and he takes pride in that. Then offensively, he just sets the table so well. He does have his games where he'll have a complete stinker. It's college. Who doesn't? But for someone who can impact the game on such a high level on both ends, being able to go down and hit you with 10 dimes and 1 turnover. Then on the other end, stop your best player from scoring and give them trouble. Like what he did with Bryce Sensabaugh this year, guarding him and strapping him up. Someone who was very, very good this year, and especially when he had to guard him, was very, very good. Having to guard him and give him problems. And then he had to switch on to Thornton when Thornton was giving them issues, and then Roddy Gale goes off because then AJ had to leave Roddy. So, in terms of being a complete guard, AJ is above everybody. I do like X. He did sit out a lot last year. But when he went down, you guys didn't have a point guard. Jalen Hood-Schifino is not a point guard. He was a combo guard thrown into the fire, and good on Mike for really just saying, I'm not going to pull you out the fire. Like, you're going to stay here. You're going to burn, and you're going to learn right now, because it's not about now. It's about who you're going to be in February, and it paid off 30-fold. That dude was amazing. He was so good. But I just think that Xavier, super quick, possibly one of the quickest lateral guys in the league. We'll see how that is with his foot. I'm not saying it's still hurt, but there are questions there. And this can change after the first couple games. But in terms of right now, I feel very comfortable with the list. If anything, I would have Ace Baldwin at 5 and Braden down at 5, or Braden down at maybe 6 or 7. But outside of that, it's I'm pretty solid with this.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like both at the top, but also really even getting into the second column of what you've got here, even down into the 8-9 range. This, I know you haven't released the last 2 positions, but just assessing the league, this feels like the deepest position. Would you agree with that assessment based on what you looked at so far?
I think center. I think center's a bit deeper. Or
it's not shooting guard, that's for sure.
No, not shooting guard. Oh no, not shooting guard. I would say the point guard and center is about even for me. I struggled with Tony Perkins, honestly. He feels like it's like some games, man, you feel like he's top 5. Then other times I'm like, yo.
Yeah, we experienced one of those last year. We're well aware.
Yeah. I really struggled with Tony Perkins. I really wanted to put him above Chucky and maybe even Doug. But you can't be that inconsistent as a guard. And this would be a big year for him. He could play at the 2, so this could be wrong. He could play more 2. Desante Bowen could play more 1, or the true freshman could just wow people, come in and play more 1 and move him off the ball, be in more scoring slots along with guys like Sanford and helping Cricky down low, and Pat McCaffrey. Now that they no longer have a Murray twin, they're going to need more of a scoring punch. So yeah, I'm pretty solid with it.
There's one question. So we'll go to shooting guard. You haven't done the small forward and power forward yet, so we're not going to get.
Have not done small forward. Have not done power forward, and I have not done a full shooting guard ranking. I've just done the top 5.
Top 5.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the centers real quick.
Okay.
You had Sissoko on there from Michigan State, but you don't have Xavier Booker, who obviously Indiana fans are very interested in because he's from the state. What are you expecting from Booker this year at Michigan State?
Not much. Another kid who's super talented, but to play for Izzo, you need to check some boxes. I don't know if he's going to check those boxes in year 1. You got to have a high motor. You got to rebound the ball. You got to be a tough SOB. And you're a freshman, and Izzo is not going to play you just to play you. And Izzo, I've seen him get very comfortable with having more of a carousel at the 5 and like a center by committee more than having a feature center. It's like last year, like in the NCAA tournament, he played about like 20 minutes a game, something like that. And he played Carson Cooper who they meant to redshirt coming into this year. Played him like around like 13, 14 a game. And I'm sitting here like, okay, if Booker comes into this, I don't see the impact right away, especially from a defensive standpoint. If he's at the 5, are you going to give up solid rebounding and rim defensive play from Maddie or someone like Carson? Are you going to give up the offense for someone like Kohler? I think someone like Cohen Carr could possibly play some 5 with how explosive he is, and how much of a matchup problem that could be, and how much he'll be able to hold his own against guys. So I think Xavier is going to be, he's going to be there at least 2 years. It's not like a one and done deal, in my opinion. I think a lot of people are expecting him to be a one and done and start and play 30 minutes. If you've watched Michigan State, that just doesn't really make sense. That doesn't really make sense at all. When someone like Jaren Jackson was thinking about coming back, did you know how many minutes Jaren played at Michigan State? Jaren Jackson, top 5 pick. He played, I think, around like, you can stat check me if you want. Like, he played around 18 or 19 minutes a game.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's it. I was going to say low 20s, so that seems right.
Yeah, so if he's playing 18 or 19 minutes, what's it look like in a 4 big man rotation for Booker, who is not going to be a top 5 pick next year?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to bash the kid, but I'm just trying to be as give as much context as possible, just with how Izzo is, how his rotations at the big man have been, and kind of where Booker is. It's gonna take some time, and gonna have some growing pains as well.
Carr is such an interesting.
Was the minutes for Jaren Jackson? I just looked at
21.8.
21.8.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What was it in Big Ten play?
Yeah, it was probably closer to what you said.
I'll have to hang on. I'll tell you just a second. Big Ten play, it was 22.2. So actually pretty similar.
Oh,
okay.
Surprisingly.
What did he play in the tournament? Syracuse, he played like 13.
This is really, you're asking a lot for me to really look at this on the fly.
I'm sorry. I just don't.
I'll let Jared go to the next question. It may take me additional time to navigate to the game log, but we'll figure it out.
Like we're like splitting hairs. Yeah, it's like around this, 20 minutes.
Yeah, around 20 minutes.
It's
It's certainly not extensive by any stretch when you look at minutes other guys are playing, for sure.
It's not like Trace last year playing 38, 39, 40 minutes
right.
every game.
That's not going to happen.
You mentioned Cohen Carr. He's an interesting one to me because Indiana was in heavy with him, kind of decided not to push for him. He goes to Michigan State. Now Indiana has Mbako. You probably don't get Mbako if you have Carr.
Right.
I'm curious who you think is going to be more impactful as a freshman, Carr or Mbako? Because I love both those guys. There's something about Carr I just love.
More impactful.
Yeah.
If Mbako's at the 4, Mbako.
Yeah.
If Mbako's at the 3, I'll go with Carr.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Mbako at the 3 for my rankings.
Yeah.
And that's
where he projects to get the most minutes. I mean, just based on the roster.
Yeah. But you want to make sure that, do you want to play Mbako 32 minutes and most of that at the 3, or would you rather be a better team and play him 25 minutes with most of that at the 4?
It's a good question.
You would much rather be a better team, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd rather be a better team for sure.
Right. But at the same time, you want to see your guy go off. You want to see your guy hoop, and you don't want what happens with Mbako to kind of hurt you down the road with other top prospects too. But if you could have your cake and eat it too by playing him just enough while not hurting the team, I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
Final Jaren Jackson update here, and then I'm closing this window so that we can move on. He played 15 minutes against Syracuse, and if you look at the last 10 games of the season, he only played over 20 minutes 3 times in the last 10.
Okay.
So it wasn't where he gradually like grew into a much larger role. It was it kind of fluctuated a lot. There was a stretch of Big Ten play where he played 30 minutes back-to-back games, and that was kind of the high water mark.
Can I answer one of these YouTube comments?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Absolutely.
From Kent Davis.
Yes.
Kent Davis.
Kent.
If Carr can't shoot, he can only dunk. Kent, you watch the highlights, that's what you will get from it. If you watch the games, you will see someone who can go from the three-point line to finishing at the rim in one dribble. I see someone in transition who will be a menace. I see someone who can rebound at a high level from day one.
Yeah.
That's what I see. And I see a jump shot that I don't think is going to be great, but I think in due time it's going to be respectable because he doesn't have terrible form. He doesn't have terrible form.
Troy Williams is the guy who comes to mind a lot for me when I watch him. Not a perfect comp, but just athletic. Troy Williams. Who played at Indiana back 6-7 years ago.
Troy's a bit more polished.
Yeah.
But I just think Carr, from a translation standpoint, what he needs to do, he's going to be really good at day one. Rebounding, his first step, playing around the rim. If he does those 3 things, Izzo is going to play him a lot.
Yeah.
And Carr's going to be on the bench, and Izzo's going to wonder, as soon as something bad happens, he's going to put him right back in the game. So I just think that Izzo is going to demand something. What Izzo demands, Carr naturally, those are his best attributes, in my opinion, to really just like kind of double down on. Like, hey, I need a rebound, go out there and play tough. I think Cohen Carr can go out and do that day one. Day one.
No, he seems like a good fit there for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk shooting guards here. You have your top 5. It doesn't go beyond that, but it's Tyson Walker, Terrence Shannon, Connor Essegian, Fletcher Lawyer, and Derek Simpson. Obviously, Troy Galloway not on there. Talk to me about these 5 and why you have them, and where do you think Trey is eventually going to fit kind of when you go all the way out to 14?
Tyson Walker and Terrence Shannon, interchangeable.
Yeah.
They could have gone either way. I like Terrence Shannon, but I think he's out of position. I think he's much better when playing with 2 guards, not have 1 guard or no guards. So I think that does hurt him because he's much better as being created for, not being the creator. I think talent-wise, I think he's better than Tyson for sure. But in terms of being efficient and being that dude for your team to go out there and make big shots and be consistent, creating for or being created for or creating for others, I think Tyson has that. Connor Essegian is that dude is dangerous. Mm-hmm. I think he's going to be someone who can, man, if he was like 6'6", he'd be a pro.
He moves off the ball as well as anyone I've seen in the conference in a
so
long time.
good.
Yeah.
Keisei's up there too. But in terms of yes, that is a huge skill that a lot of people don't have. Not even Fletcher has that in terms of, because like Fletcher, he just goes to that curling action a lot, but Connor will get off his shot, whether it's flares, curls, reading screens, and his shot is so quick, and he's not hesitant to get downhill, get to the cup, and get dirty, and he's an overall killer, and they're going to need him to score next year. I think Chucky should shoot the ball less and give those shots to Connor. Fletcher, I think that in year 2, someone like that who was able to come in year 1, play as well as he played, he got figured out at the end, so did Braden at the end. but a lot of that was teams had to kind of get around like, oh, we should pressure them. Oh, okay, cool. I got it now. Okay, great, thanks. When he struggled, he really struggled. When Purdue struggled in the NCAA tournament against that FDU team, he was one of the only ones who was still shooting the shot. I think him getting stronger, him getting better going downhill to the basket is just going to open up his game a lot more. And he's going to have a lot more scoring opportunities this year because I don't think Edey is going to play as much. I don't see him playing 32, whatever he played last year. Edey needs to play about 25, 26 because they're going to need him to not be hurt and play all the way through. Derek Simpson, Paul Mulcahy, and Cam Spencer left.
Yeah.
You have a huge opportunity there. You're going to be the guy. He was the guy for them in the last several games, and I kind of see that going forward. Noah Fernandez does shoot threes and all that stuff, but Noah also averaged around 5 assists, so he's going to be more of a table setter. Gavin Griffiths is going to come in and play more 3 and 4. Just think Derek is going to be one of the only ones to like be given the ball and be put in that Geo Baker role where you're going to have to go out there and make some offense happen, go get us some points. But overall, the shooting guard spot is probably one of the weaker and one of the ones where you see a lot more role players in this spot than your top 2 options. I do like Trey. Do like CJ as well. We'll see what happens with CJ this year. Hearing some good things. If he's going to start, that'd be cool. But I do like Trey. I do like Trey as well. But when it comes to like actual production, he would be probably middle tier on this list.
Mm-hmm. When you look at this Indiana team, and obviously everybody has high hopes for CJ, but not quite sure what to expect. I mean, given how little he produced last year, a lot of the offseason reports have been positive, and as we've talked about on this show numerous times, I don't put much stock into his shooting percentage last year. He's a freshman, inconsistent minutes, small sample size, and he has a track record of being a shooter. Do you look at this as, kind of the best outcome for Indiana is, he emerges, becomes a key player who can play, like you said earlier, 25 minutes. You've got him, you got X, and then, put Trey at the 3, and then you're playing Mbako with either Malik or Kalel or whoever at the center.
Yes. It's a guard's game.
Yeah.
Mbako is not a guard. Maybe at the next level, but in college, he is the perfect 4. Perfect 4. He's going to have a matchup that is going to be good for him on both ends of the floor. Like, how good was Keegan Murray at the 4? Right? How good was EJ Liddell at the 4 in this league?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't put him at the 3. Really, like they put those cats, they put him at the 4, and that's when they went nuts. Think about Iowa's best teams, like their best lineup 2 years, not last year, but the year before. How good was that lineup when they went with Pat, Keegan, and Chris at the 3, 4, and 5?
Yeah,
you got 3 wings down there, just making life hell. Who does your center guard? And then whoever your center guards, now you got your 6'4" wing guarding either Chris or Keegan or Pat and Keegan or like how are you? And then they're going to run so much BS that you're going to get a bad switch somewhere, and you're going to have a little short guy guarding Chris Murray in the post. It's over at that point. So I think him at the 4, it just makes. It makes so much sense. And he's not someone where you're going to pass him the ball and come off pick and roll and make the reads and do all those things. I just don't see that. I just see him just demolishing everyone at the 4 spot.
Yeah.
So how much do you think, going back to the shooting guards for a second? I mean, I know you talked about this. We've Coach on our show has echoed this multiple times about it being a guards game. And so you look at those shooting guards and you're kind of like, all right, what does this mean for this team, for this league again? So, spin forward the narrative of why did the Big Ten not do well in the NCAA tournament? kind of feels like looking ahead, that might again be their undoing. Do you think that is something we end up talking about in March again, or do you think maybe they can overcome some of the lack of dynamism at that position?
Purdue didn't do good in the NCAA tournament. I think the Big Ten did okay.
Yeah, I think it's hard, especially when you said what you brought up earlier with so many teams being seated in positions where they really weren't favored to win.
8, 9, 10, exactly.
Yeah,
so
100%.
They went 4-2 in coin flip games. 4-2. Right? And then Michigan State was the one team to beat the 2 seed. But Penn State, Texas was a really close game. Northwestern and UCLA was a really close game. Right? But then you have Maryland they ran up against a buzzsaw in Alabama. And then you have Iowa lost that game to Auburn because Fran is Fran, but you have an Illinois team who had to play. I told Illinois fans, I gave them like 3 teams they want to avoid. One of those was Arkansas, and of course they pulled Arkansas first. And I didn't like that matchup because Illinois didn't have good guards. Arkansas has 2 pros at the guard spot, possibly 3 with like Ricky Council. So I was like, you don't want this matchup. And then they got the matchup. Then even if they had won that miraculously, now you got to go play Kansas. So I think the Big Ten did okay. They did okay. Even Indiana was fine. Like, you got this far without a guard, without a point guard. I'm sorry. And then you play Nigel Pack and Isaiah Wong. I mean, giving context, it's not as bad. Purdue completely ruined the conference again. So,
yeah,
Thanks,
I guess I mean more probably better said. I mean, always great to bring that up on here for sure. But I guess better said in terms of not advancing a lot of teams deep in the tournament. Maybe is a better way to say it. I mean, do you think while the level of point guard play probably is good enough to do that, the shooting guard, the gap between those feels pretty wide. And so how much do you think that hinders what we might see Big Ten teams do from a, making an Elite 8 run or maybe getting a team to Final Four or something like that? Do you think that ends up being the potential undoing, at least sitting here now in the, end of June? Does that feel like what could be the narrative again?
It all comes down to matchups. It all comes down to matchups and what you're able to do. If you're looking at, look at that UConn team. They blew out pretty much everybody. Their biggest flaws, they didn't get exposed with. They really didn't have a point guard themselves. But they didn't play a team that could have exposed them. That was the biggest thing. When you have a conference like the Big Ten that is so well coached, top to bottom, it is so hard and it cannibalizes itself because you can't go out and get any real easy wins, unfortunately. And some of those easy wins, like I said earlier, you need some bad teams at the bottom. Like the ACC just had Florida State, Louisville, like another team that won 8 total ACC games. Big Ten didn't have that. They had 1 in Minnesota. I'm not counting Ohio State because that was, in my opinion, an NCAA tournament roster.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of those games, they lost so many games within 1 or 2 possessions. They were right there.
And then Nebraska ended up beating people the second half of the season,
and then
so they weren't easy.
started doing crazy things too, and they didn't have enough bad teams. The league needs 2 or 3 Minnesotas every single year. So those 7 teams that go to the NCAA tournament, 3 or 4 of them are in the top 6, not just 1 or 2. They need 1 or 2 seeds, a couple 4 or 5 seeds. Now the chances of going to a second weekend are much higher. And then you may even get a little upset, right? Are you able to go if you're like a 3 or 4 seed, like, do you play now an 11 or like a 13 or 14 in that second game? Like, are you like, how good is Indiana feeling right now if they had to play whoever Miami beat in their first round? Like, how
Drake.
it's a tad bit different. If you look at how the Purdue region kind of came out, it was what, like FAU, Kansas State, Michigan State, and who else?
Marquette,
Was it?
I think.
Yes, and then like the year
No,
before,
I think it was Tennessee. Was it Tennessee? Marquette was
Was
who
it
played Michigan, who lost to Michigan State, right?
FAU beat Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
FAU
Yeah, I think that was
beat
the
Tennessee.
Elite Eight, or that was one side, and then Michigan
That
State.
was the Sweet
Kansas State was the
16.
other side.
Or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
because Tennessee beat Duke in the round of 32.
Yep.
Yeah.
But even the year prior, like, you had Purdue was in the Sweet 16 against St. Peter's. Like, if you're Purdue, like, you just got tossed the biggest meatball of all time. But then you fold again, because that's just what you do. Then before that, they get fed North Texas and Indiana, and they lose. I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
What they do.
Yeah.
I mean, you really got off to a slow start with you're rehashing the Kelvin Sampson, but the last few minutes of really rehashing these Purdue losses, you're really ramping up to endear yourself to the fan base. So
it makes me
excellent work.
It makes me mad because when I'm trying to defend the Big Ten, other conferences bring up Purdue, they bring up St. Peter's, they bring up all these. So now I'm getting destroyed because I'm trying to back up the conference with context and all these things, and they're sending me pictures of like St. Peter's celebrating and all these things, and like Jaden Ivey like crying. I'm like, this guy thinks they own me when that's not even what this is about right now. So yeah, it's tough.
What are your couple more questions here before we wrap up, man? I really appreciate your time. This has been a fun conversation. Mike Woodson, overall, just your thoughts on his tenure so far, both, on the coach or on the floor, X's and O's, and then what he's doing as a recruiter. Because I think one of the things that Indiana fans have really noticed or felt is it feels like there's been a sea change recruiting-wise. Where Indiana's now, you look at the 24 and 25 kids, I mean, they're getting official visits from all kinds of top 20, top 30 guys that we haven't had in a while.
Tom Crean got some guys.
He did. Not consistently, but he did there for a while.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the question. It feels like things are kind of better and in a better, direction with Woodson, but also it's still just his third year. And so, so I'm just curious from kind of an outsider's perspective how you're viewing his tenure so far.
There's an excitement. And I think that goes hand in hand with where the program is, where they have expectations. Like me having them at 7 is not a slight on them. It's more so on, hey, you have these new pieces, figure it out, more than anything else. And I go and look at the 5 teams or 6, the 5 ahead of them. Well, I have Indiana at 6. So the 5 teams ahead of them, they've brought back their core, right? Indiana lost JHS. They lost TJD, right? Mm-hmm. They lost their 2 horses. How are you going to respond to that is the biggest thing. And still having excitement about the program, I think bodes really well. At the same time, we know fans can run sick and tired really, really quickly. So I think that you have to have some patience. I think he's done an outstanding job. Getting them back to the tournament back-to-back years is great. But Indiana needs another Final Four. Maybe if you don't win the national championship, I get it. It's hard. Go win 4 games in the NCAA tournament. Go win 4 games. Get back to a Final Four. And then at that point in time, whatever happens, happens. I think that's what Indiana fans like feel that they need to see. Like, Indiana needs a Final Four. Probably just as much as Purdue needs a Final Four. or beat a double-digit seed, whichever one comes first.
Some of us at least have, relatively recent memories of a Final Four.
Yeah,
2002, but
2002.
it was
Did you guys
a while
lose to
ago.
that
But
Maryland team? Lost to that Maryland team?
yes, we did.
Yep.
That Maryland team was really good, though.
They were.
They're like Steve Blake, Juan Dixon, Terrence Morris. That team.
Chris
Wilcox.
Wilcox. Yep.
Wilcox
Lonnie
on that
Baxter,
team.
was he on that team too?
Lonnie.
Yeah.
Hey, that was a really good team, man. But I will say he's done a really good job. He's put the energy back into the program. Fans are looking forward to the success, not to the season. I think those are two very different things. You're not excited about basketball coming. You're excited about your team. Hey, let's see how we compete this year. Let's see we can get in that top 4 in the league. Let's see if we can get that again, right? And then let's see what happens from there. Who's going to come out and be all Big Ten? Are we going to be able to, sweep Purdue again? Like these are legit things where before it was, hey, let's not get embarrassed, or hey, let's try to get to 500. That's not what this team's about. I think this team's about competing for a Big Ten championship and nothing less. I think they believe that they can win a Big Ten championship, and I think that's more important than anything else. Some teams go into the year, man, hope we get to 20 wins. I hope we get to the tournament. I think Indiana feels that they can go out. Going to the tournament is not some accomplishment anymore, right? Yeah, we're past that. It's, hey, can we go out there and hang a Big Ten banner once again? Can we do that? It's been once since 2016 or 2013?
Yeah, one in 2013 and 2016, but not since.
Okay. So so 16, so about like 7-8 years. So you've got the talent to kind of get back to that. You have NBA players and you have a really good point guard. That's a really good formula, especially in the Big Ten. If you have NBA type talent and you have a point guard that you can really like allow to just carry you through, like what he did at Xavier last year in that game on the road. Yeah, he had a couple hiccups at the end, but he had some game-winning plays that you just can't take away. Hopefully one of the freshmen come in. How's Jakai doing? Have you heard about him?
I don't know. He's not going full speed in practice. He's not scrimmaging and doing a lot of that stuff. They're trying to be cautious with the meniscus.
Okay.
So no one's quite sure yet, what his role is going to be, or even if he's going to redshirt. It's still up in the air.
Gotcha. When he's ready to go, that's going to be one of the more exciting players in the league. He's going to be ridiculous. Just from an athletic standpoint, man, he can go. He can go. But you have the pieces, and that's what you like. You have depth. That's what you like. You have someone in Gabe Cupps who I believe can work his way into the rotation and play 15, 18 minutes if need be. You have shooting guards. You need Trey or CJ to really come out of their shell. You need Renew to take another step forward because he's got the talent. You need Sparks to be everything he can be and play 15, 20, maybe 25 if need be. If someone gets hurt or foul trouble or he's just not in the game. Got options everywhere. And that's all you can really hope for at this point, and just hope that everybody stays healthy. But Mike Woodson in year 3, really, he's been a good addition to the league. He's made the Big Ten better. He's made other coaches better. He's bringing more talent in, and I think that's a big piece to it as well. When Indiana is good, the league is pretty healthy. So,
one guy who I know there are a couple questions in the chat about that we haven't talked too much about, and maybe is a benefactor if Mabako plays a little bit more of the 4, but is Caleb Banks, who I think a lot of IU fans are excited about. Showed a few flashes, kind of energy guy off the bench in a few minutes here and there. What's kind of quick thoughts on him as one of the guys coming back that you haven't mentioned so far for IU.
Whenever he played, he gave 110. Whenever he played, he gave 110. You have to find minutes for him. I'm not sure where that's going to be. If he's able to shoot the ball, okay. If he can shoot the ball and defend, if he just sees himself as like, hey, a 3-and-D guy, the high motor, maybe he can add some depth to the three, especially if he's hitting the shots. Maybe him and Mbako could play like a combo forward position. One plays one on one end, the other plays the other on the other end. But that's someone else who you gotta play, man. Man, I feel like some games he came in and the whole momentum just switched, just from his energy. Yeah. Like he'll go and he'll have like a big time putback and one. Everyone's yelling for him, screaming for him. On the other end, he'll get a block or he'll get a charge call or he'll get a deflection and he'll pump the crowd up and everyone's ready to go. Next thing you know, it goes from being a game where, it's like it feels like a bit stagnant. But he just lights a fire under everyone. And I could tell the guys love playing with him. But it's going to be tough to find minutes. And it sucks for guys like that. Who will be a positive. They're not the sexy guy who's going to come in and make all these cool moves and fadeaway jumpers, swish, go down and slap the floor and have little like cool shuffles. He's not that guy. Like he's going to dive on the floor. He's going to he will flip backwards 10 times to get a loose ball. You have to find minutes for those guys, and you have to find minutes, but also meaningful minutes. Don't just put them in just because you feel like you have to, but put him in like a decent rotation where he's out there for 6 minutes, 7 minutes at a time, not like 2 or 3 here and there because he can't even get his own rhythm. But you got to find time for that type of guy. You have to. He's not just some dude who can come in and make shots. He's someone who's going to do all the little things. He's someone who doesn't care about scoring. If he scores, that's cool. If he gets a rebound, that's cool. All he cares about is winning a possession, whether that's on offense or on defense. And when you have guys who only care about getting stops and the team scoring, those are winners. Those are guys that you have to find time for. But I'm not the one to make those decisions. Thank goodness.
Last question for you, Ant. Really enjoyed this conversation, man. And I want to bring our conversation full circle. So we started out talking about Kelvin Sampson. And Indiana fans often lament the fact that Indiana passed on John Beilein to hire Kelvin Sampson. And what would that have been like if Indiana had John Beilein, and could Indiana have had the success that he had at Michigan? You played for John Beilein. Yeah. And so I'd just love to know kind of your experience playing for him and if there's a story that kind of sums up what he was like as a coach. Because he's a guy Indiana fans always admired from afar for obvious reasons.
He's super smart. I don't think anyone watches film as much as him. And I think that's why I could watch the film the way that I watch it, is because I took so many things away from him. Something as small as, I remember, my first year under him, and we're watching film, and he has the 2-guard offense, right? It's like a Princeton on steroids with a bunch of counters, right? And he broke it down to the point where if you pivot with the wrong foot, you will mess up the play because the defense will jam you. Something that little, right? So I took that and I started applying that to everything in basketball, where I looked at the game a different way. So people, when they're watching the game, they watch like, oh, they're gonna, okay, come on, make the shot. I'm looking at the off-ball guy setting a screen to see if he just messed up the play, or I'm looking at the off-ball guy, I'm looking at the defender, I'm looking at the screen coming, and I'm looking at, are they going to go over or under? I know exactly what the dude shoots from three. Well, not exactly, but roughly in the last 5, how he's been from three. And and if he goes under, I'm gonna go, oops. Or if he goes over, I'm like, oh, he's good. Then I'm gonna see, is the big man, is he gonna go flat? Are they gonna blitz it? Are they gonna drop? What are they gonna do? And then I'm looking at when the shot goes up, I'm looking at, are the wings crashing? Is anyone getting back? Like, really, like, I don't know, like, it's and then it's fun. That's live, right? Then it's fun going back, remembering a play, and then micro analyzing it even more based off of what I already saw the first time. And there will be something that I either missed or something that I was like wrong on. And that's always fun. And then if it's something really cool, I'll break it down and I'll post it on Twitter. Like, hey, check this out. This is what I saw in this game. This is why it was cool. This is why it wasn't. Like, there's no content in July, really. Like, one of my goals is to, like, go back and watch a few games from around the Big Ten and break down some sequences and post them and just see how people take it in. So, watching film, John Beilein, that's one thing that that has stuck with me forever. Just the way that I consume the game. It's not, the game isn't black and white. And I think a lot of time the game is discussed in black and white when there's really a bunch of gray. It's a bunch of gray, and things have happened for a reason. Certain plays happen for a reason. I remember watching one game where a play didn't make sense at all, but then they came back the next possession, ran a similar play just like it, and scored. And I go, they only ran that first play to see how they were switching a certain action. And then they came back and ran something else that featured that same action, and they got like an easy bucket off of it. And I'm just like, okay, that's just gorgeous. That's beautiful basketball. But the way that I consume the game is because of him, because he's so X's and O savvy, and he just understands little things, so nothing crazy.
Well, that kind of insight is why you're such a good follow on Twitter, at It's Ant Wright on Twitter. You post a lot of film breakdowns on there. Where should everybody else be going to connect with you and your Big Ten talk?
It's Ant Wright everywhere, whether it's on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. Yeah, and then I do have an Indiana site. It's called Hoosier Illustrated.
Yeah.
As well. So ran by Alec Lastly, real good guy.
Yeah, those guys do a good job.
Yeah, real good guy. So we launched that a few months ago. He's done an outstanding job for us, and we're just keeping them moving.
Greg in the chat asked for a State of the Union from Ant on Michigan. I would say just follow Ant's content and his social media
State
content.
of the Union.
You'll get constant State of the Unions on Michigan.
They need a big guard. There's my State of the Union.
Yes.
They need a big guard, or they're going to be bottom 6 in the league.
Boy,
easily.
It's amazing
also,
how fast stuff changes.
Yeah, also, my guy Kent said he lives in Georgia and knows Cohen Carr. Dude, I have argued with family members about their kid before, and I was right every single time. So I don't care if it's you, Cohen Carr. I'm right. I'm right, and I say that in the most arrogant way, because I've argued with agents, I've argued with college basketball coaches about players. I'm like, look, this is what's going to happen, and I'm like 98 for 99.
Who'd you miss on?
Brandon Johns.
Oh.
But my excuse is John Beilein left after his freshman year.
Oh, yeah. Well, that'll make a difference.
That'll make a big difference. When I'm looking at who he's put in the league, I'm like, okay, he put DJ Wilson in the league as a top 20 pick. Brandon's got more juice than he does. So I'm thinking, okay, Like that's easy. You talk to trainers from Indiana, they feel the same way too. They feel the same way too. So they feel that he was always a pro. But yeah, that was like my one miss. That was my one big miss. But it's all good though. It's all good. It's all good. I'm excited about Cohen Carr though. I think he's going to be able to rebound at a high level, and he should be good around the rim. I don't know how much of a scorer, but in terms of just being someone that Izzo can really rely on as a freshman in year one,
he's going to impact games.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if Malik Hall is still a bit inconsistent. We'll see because he had the foot injury. We'll see if he can really stay healthy this year. If he can do that, I still think Carr is going to still find a way to play 15 plus a game because he just provides so much strength, power, toughness, and athleticism.
Yeah. Well, Ant, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. This has been a fun conversation. Check them out at It's Ant Wright. Check out their site, Hoosier Illustrated, right? Is it
Hoosier Illustrated? Yeah. I've got about 16 different websites for colleges. Well, I got one NFL site, but Indiana I got one for just HoosierIllustrated.com.
Yeah. Check those guys out. They do a good job, and let's get you back on here again soon, man. Really appreciate it. Always fun talking
to you. Without a doubt. Just holler at me, whatever.
Will do, man. Cool. Thanks, Ant.
How many viewers you guys have right now? I don't even know.
Well, we got 118 live.
118?
It's not bad.
No, famous.
That's not bad for an off-season show. My wife is always like, and there are really people watching live in the middle of the summer when there's nothing to talk about.
Man.
Like, well,
if you're bored,
you'd be surprised.
if you're bored and you want to listen to some drama, a Michigan beat writer versus like some Michigan State guys, I had in a space today.
Oh, I saw some people talking about that on Twitter.
Go back. It's in a recording. If you want to listen to some grown men like yell at each other, go ahead. Hit play. I started when it like starts, and it's like 30. It's only 30 minutes. It's a legit 30 minutes straight of just craziness. But,
all right, I'm gonna go check that.
I appreciate you guys. I really do.
Thanks,
all
man.
Right.
You've made following all this transfer portal stuff this year much more fun and interesting. So
hey, I can't say too much, but I may have something cooking for next year already, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be wild.
Okay, beautiful.
It's gonna be wild.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ant. We'll talk to you soon,
Alrighty.
man.
Thanks.
See you guys.
See you.
All righty, and that is going to do it for us on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. Thanks to Ant for being here. If you ever want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Thank you, as always, to Bob Thompson for producing our music. Thank you to John Ringer of rigdesign.com for designing our logos. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next Thursday. Until then,
take it from me, Max Bielfeldt. Keep your calves flexed, your elbows in, and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Here I come. This is Stunt Sony.
all right, good stuff, Andy.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Good having you back, man. Yeah, he's a fun dude to talk hoops with.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have other people who watch as much Big Ten basketball as I'm sure more realistically for every team, but
anytime you can talk
the folks
to someone,
who are really into the Big Ten, they're like,
yes.
Everybody has a soft spot, even though even as he said, he's having to try to like defend Purdue's performance or whatever. That's how you know you got somebody who really that's tough to do, but
that's really what brings all Big Ten fans
knows
together.
The league well.
Yeah, we have to freaking apologize for Purdue. Just take care of don't take care of your business. It's fun.
Yeah, it's more fun.
Do that, Purdue.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he can if whenever you talk with someone who's not like a fan of your school, but they can pull out little obscure things like him pulling out Malik Renew making the 3 against Bethune-Cookman. You've got someone who studies the league. So
yeah, just a little.
That's good.
Just a little bit.
So we'll look to have him on again in the future. He knows his stuff. So
for sure. All right, man.
He does. All right, Andy. Take care, everybody. We will see you all later on.
All right.
In the community. Back here next Thursday. See y'all.